If you are not seeing me in full transparency, I was traveling today and my plane had all kinds of issues. So when I say that I am like in transit, I am actually fully in transit, but I wouldn't miss this for the world. But my second slide is like, who am I? Why am I doing these things? So I am an Institute Educator Ambassador. So I got affiliated with Common Power doing the learning tours. And I am a team co-lead with Wisconsin. So if you all are coming out to be with us in Milwaukee, I'm really looking forward to seeing everyone. Perfect. There we go. And I'm on my second slide. Um, I work currently as a program director in Illinois, training teachers and also working with educators and other community members who are going to do policy work and civic engagement. And my favorite thing is I'm Jamila's dad. We recently wrote for Common Power's blog because I bring her canvassing with me because she's my favorite person. And I'm Patty's son because my mom is wanting to hopefully come out canvassing with me. We'll see if that actually happens, but I'm really excited. So, for this afternoon, our time together, I have some really straightforward goals, and they are split. One of the things that I'm hoping that we're able to walk away from is an actual opportunity to capacity build for you all, as well as understand how we can move our the people that we're knocking on doors, like the people that we're meeting. How do we support them in seeing that change happens not just during the election cycle, but every day? So we're looking to empower them in the steps that they're able to take after we knock on that door. I know one of the things that we've often talked about is, hey, how are we getting people, engaged year round? And some of the community organizations that we work with have pointed out that they do deep canvassing, meaning that they try to provide for folks even outside of the election cycle. But that's a lot harder when people don't know what resources and opportunities they have. And so hopefully by the end of this, we're able to have a bit more of a conversation around what are those things, and you feel empowered and comfortable hosting these conversations. I saw a lot of folks that are hoping for advice on how to handle difficult conversations or how to get information about, when things go wrong at the doors. And we'll kind of touch on that, but I'm going to highlight when you'll actually use a lot of these skills. And so when we think about engagement as a general thing, there is a spectrum. The bulk of people that we're going to encounter at the doors would kind of fall into that middle road where realistically they are going to vote. They are going to be engaged and they may just be doing the bare minimum, but they're going to do it. What we're thinking about are the people who are on those ends. We're thinking about the apathetic voters, the people who are like, hey, I didn't know I could vote. I don't know why I would vote. I don't know what voting is actually going to do. Nobody really cares or does anything. And we're looking at those really engaged voters. So the people that when you start talking to them, it isn't enough that you're there to talk to them about voting. They want to know the next thing, right? Like, okay, this is great. I know where I'm going to vote, but I want to be able to do all kinds of things outside of this. And so that obviously raises some very basic questions that I want to tackle head on. What happens when you get questions that you don't have the answers for? What happens when you feel like, hey, they're asking me all kinds of things and I have no actual way of highlighting this? Well, here are some really clear things. One, you don't have to have those answers. I know in the work that we do that we want to be as supportive as possible. We want to guide people to things. We want to help them really figure out what their opportunities are. But that's a lot for any individual person to take on. You can't know every single legislative process in every single city and state and municipality. But what you can do is point them to their resources. Where can they find the information? Who can help them? Who are our partner organizations that we're working with that they can follow up with to become more empowered and engaged? And really straightforward things, there are resources out there that they can use and you can use all the time. And so obviously we're going to start with whatever our partners are giving us, But I listed some out here that if you're not familiar with them, these are designed to help people get information in a really straightforward and efficient way and begin taking action. So, Ballotpedia, if you are unclear on what your municipal water reclamation district does, they will help you understand that. If you don't know what, the most recent crop that comes in is, they will help break those things down, as well as voter 411. So this will be based off of where people live, and it'll give them really clear information on what's happening around them. Congress.gov are for, those high-end things. They'll tell you how people have voted. They'll tell you, what senators and representatives have brought legislation or haven't. And then Ballot Ready is one that if you are working with someone who's 18 and this is their first vote, or someone who is 80 and they voted before, but they are unclear what's going to actually be on the ballot this time around, Ballot Ready, the moment that they put in their address, it'll tell them what's going to be on the ballot that they are going to vote on in the election that's upcoming. And so these are things that you can use when you're at the door to guide people, to further empower them, but also to take some of that pressure that you may feel to have an answer.
Yeah, and can I jump in here really quick too, Jordan?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so this is actually something that we learn from our partner organizations, especially community organizations, like who are there long term to like build political power in their organization, right? In their community, I mean. They have actually asked us to like refer to the literature or to a specific website, and that's going to be local depending on where you go to volunteer, and to show voters how to get on it, what information they can find, because what they've realized is that not many people will perfectly remember the spiel that you give them at a door, right? You can give them all the dates that you know, you give them all the names that you know, you give them all of the ballot propositions or whatever the case that you know of, right? And they may remember like two out of the 10 things you told them. However, if you actually send them to the website or to the phone number or to where they can look this up themselves, you have a much higher chance of that voter actually knowing how to reference that information 2 weeks from now, the day before election, showing a friend how to do it, showing their family how to do it. You've empowered a voter in a way that you wouldn't be able to if you just were if your goal was to just get through the script or to get through all these dates that you memorized. All right. So I think the first step in kind of like engaging folks and not just like spilling all the information you know at their feet is to actually engage them in the process of like, you're a voter, you're participating in civics. This is one step of doing it, and I'm going to show you where you can do that for yourself. Okay.
All right. So, real quick, I actually want to give you all about 2 minutes. Plug in one of those resources, any of the ones that, as I described them, sound like they would be impactful for you. Because when I said that we're going to build your toolkit, it would be great for me to give you these links, but I want you to actually look at them real quick because there are going to be some scenarios at the end of this, which, yes, I'm a sucker for a good scenario. And so I want you to feel empowered to know, like, hey, I've already kind of tested this one out. This is something that I would feel comfortable. So, not going to take too long on this, but um, about 2 minutes to just kind of plug in one of the links and kind of see what may feel right. And then I'll bring us back together at 5:21 or 21 after. So again, just plugging in real quick any of those links on there to see what resource feels good to you. All right. Uh, Maybe let's hear three people who had the opportunity to experience a website. Are there any things that you noticed kind of in the exploration of these sites? Let's see, we have a question. Will our partner organizations have all of this to hand out when we're on the ground? So Ben, I will let you speak to that from like the higher level. What I can tell you is every time that I've canvassed, we have resources about elections, candidates, and things from our partner orgs. And so we share those. These links, though, I'm giving to you here, which is why I wanted to give you, like a minute or two to actually look at them and see what feels right. But it will also be a part of the recording, and it's something that I can send out or give to the team to share with you all as you touch down on the ground.
Yep, you totally got it, Jordan. We don't have all of the resources that you are going to see in this presentation every time we go there. Usually, our partner will have a hotline or at the very least a website to direct voters to if they have any questions or if they want more information. But other than that, everything else is just kind of like what you know of yourself. Um, and Rebecca, go ahead.
Hey everyone. I just went to Ballot Ready, plugged in my dad's info just to see what it was like in another state, and super handy. And I've only canvassed once with Common Power, but I will say in Phoenix, Luca gave us this really awesome card that had a code you could scan and it would take you to their website. And I perused that and I would actually open it up on my phone and show them, let's go to the voter dashboard. Let's see if you're registered. Let's see if you know where. And I would actually hold the phone and show them that and then give them the card. So, but I love having like a backup in case, you know, I go somewhere again and they don't have a place like that. Like Luca has a one-stop shopping in Phoenix.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
this is a part of it. I think one of the things that I'm really hoping we're able to see with some of these resources is our partners are absolutely amazing and are going to make sure that we are put in positions to succeed. But one of the things that we can do to support people across the spectrum in their engagement and their growth is have almost like a tool belt, right?
Yeah.
Maybe the literature is going to appeal to one audience, but it doesn't work for another. Maybe we have a skill set that works with another group, but others are confused. What this allows you to do now is say, like, hey, have you tried Ballot Ready? Like, do you know what's
Yeah.
going to actually be on there? And I think one of the things that are helpful in engaging voters, whether they're difficult or people that want to do more or apathetic, there are things that I still find that are going to be on my ballot that I wasn't aware of when I hop on Ballot Ready. And so let's see one more person, and then I will keep on chugging along. But what did you get a chance to try? How did it feel? What appealed to you? Anyone? Going once, twice. All right, I'm gonna keep on rolling. So there's another fun thing that, oop, if you lose me for a second, I'll be right back. Let's see. Can you hear me?
There you go.
Brilliant. There we go. Okay. So there is another fun thing that we often run into that I want to just straightforward head up on this. What happens if you don't know an answer? A lot of times, what we're actually getting are people who are upset at the president for something that's their alderman's issue, or they're mad at their alderman for federal policy that that poor alderman has absolutely nothing to do with. And so, like very briefly, we wanted to highlight the difference between their municipal, their city, their state, and their federal levels. And so when they think about like their very local parks and things, right? Like that thing that's right down there, they are talking about some of their municipal issues. If you've had a voter say like, "Hey, I'm really upset about these potholes in my street, and I've called my senator and they never do anything. Yeah, they won't. Not because they don't care about you as an individual, but because that's not your senator's purview. And so helping them scale back may bring them back to the political table. It isn't that that person is disengaged or upset. It's because they are actually reaching out to the wrong person to solve their issue. And so helping them realize where their support actually is a very palpable way of engaging them and bringing them into the conversation. When we're talking about the presidential election, the number of people that I've encountered just in my personal life that are upset at the president for things that, while yes, they may have an opinion on it, but isn't a direct control, like, or a direct function of their job, helping them understand that is a way to re-engage them in their local politics, put perspective on what their president actually can do, and then help them feel empowered to do more in their city, state, and actual community. And so we just wanted to highlight very briefly that sometimes when we're listening, the first step that we can take to support people is helping them realize, where does their issue or problem actually lie? Are they mad that they've been contacting the wrong person? Are they assigning blame and responsibility to people who it's not even a part of their purview? And is that leading to some of the disenfranchisement that they may be seeing? And so as we move into this, one of the things that I'm really hopeful that we are able to understand, and I'm a sucker for a good quote. And so if you've ever done a session with me or heard me talk about, I love bell hooks, love Angela Davis, and there's some forward thinkers, but sometimes people try to destroy you precisely because they recognize your power, not because they don't see it, but because they see it and they don't want it to exist. A lot of the voters that we are going to engage in some places, it isn't that they don't want to be engaged. It isn't that they are uninformed. They may not be informed on the policy level, but they know the direct impact. They know what's happening in their lives because of how people have voted. And so our job is to support them in taking what they realize about their day to day and help them take action. The number one thing that we're doing at the doors is, yes, informing people of when they can vote, where they can vote, and ensuring that they have a plan. But we also, for many, are the face of this election because someone may not be coming out to them in that way and really hearing their concerns and helping them tailor that energy. We are helping them understand that their vote is their voice and it's critical to them making change. And so as we kind of dive into this, I'm curious, and this will be an opportunity for us to use the chat for about the next 2 minutes, but I'm curious when you've seen change happen, right? And so what I mean by this is I have seen a local school board vote on a brand new curriculum, and one of the curriculums was inherently racist. It had some undertones that were minimizing of people of color and their contributions, but I know how it happened. I know that we had an organization that pushed to get what they were considering more inclusive curriculum. And by more inclusive, they wanted to share that, it encompassed multiple racially inclusive literature. So who was involved in the influencing? These were parent groups. These were local school board members. These were teacher organizations who needed curriculum and needed updated curriculum. And so in the push to get something that they could utilize, it wasn't properly vetted. And so the decision-making process actually did not take very long, but the lead up, the ramp up, the conversations took a few months. And so I'm curious in the chat, if we can just have a few minutes, when have you seen a policy, a practice, or a procedure change? What was it and who was involved? So it can be everything from, we had people stop having lemonade stands on the corner because there was a municipal ordinance, to I saw my kid's school change their dress code. But when have you seen change? Who was involved? How did it happen? Can go ahead and drop it in the chat for me.
I'm gonna stop share, Jordan, so that maybe you can share on your screen instead, if that's
Absolutely.
easier.
Yep.
Okay. All right. And then that way everybody gets a chance to kind of like see each other in the chat here.
Yes. Yeah, I'm kidding. When have you seen it? How long did it take? Who was involved?
And while people are doing that, I'm just going to answer Kathy's question really quickly. So those the resources that we have there, some of them don't really address it because there's more general. If someone really wants to know like the status of their ballot, it really depends on the state and the infrastructure in that state. Some states it's not going to be easy to find. Some states very easy to find. And it's usually the resource that our partner will give us to direct voters to. That could be the Secretary of State's website. That could be, whatever they're using as like the voter portal for that state. So it will be there. Okay. Jordan, oh, yes, we see your screen.
There we go. I am back in
Okay.
action. So let's see. We
Yes,
had a dangerous curve with no stop sign or warning. We circulated a petition and then went to the city, took the whole summer, but we succeeded. It's awesome. I'm curious, anyone else, when have you seen change?
also Jordan, I don't know if it's just me, but there's like little spots, lights on your actual screen
Hmm.
that's covering some of it.
Yep. Let me see. And we're gonna do this. I am getting the black screen effect. Okay, Seattle waterfront. We voted multiple times about the seawall, the viaduct, and a brand new aquarium. It took 20 years, but it's fabulous. That is awesome. Okay, so I'm gonna have to close up a bunch of stuff to eliminate those black screens, and we are gonna keep it rolling. So thank you all for sharing. So here's the deal. These next few slides are for you all. Okay, I'm going to highlight where it helps you at the doors, but like I said, a part of this training is to help build your capacity as well. And so here are some very quick and concise things to know about influencing policy. People are experts in their lives. Even if they are not the most politically active, if you get a person that talks about they haven't voted in a while, they're a lapsed voter, those types of things, that person is still an expert in their life. They may not understand the international implications of inflation and how that happens, but they know that groceries are more expensive than they were before, and they can tell you when that started. And so when we are at the doors, when we are working with people in community, we want to validate those lived experiences and acknowledge that people are the experts in their lives. And so that's not to diminish their experiences, especially because, given backgrounds and the fact that we do a lot of this work, there may come a moment where, okay, I wish this person knew this. That's all well, and we can always get them more education, but they are the expert in their experience and how that shapes their political engagement. The next thing to know is that the policies that affect communities are not random. It may feel like it at some points, but these are not random things. They are not just happening. There was thought involved, there were questions, there were opportunities for change and engagement that came up, and those were the deciding factors. And so we are affirming for people when they say, like, it feels like this policy hurts us, or this decision that they made hurts us. It isn't because that's random. Oftentimes, the number one thing that people don't understand is that they're asking the wrong questions. And that's hard to tell people, which is why I'm going to frame it here for you all. Often when I work with teachers, the number one thing that we tell them is politicians don't care about your classroom. And that's not to be mean. That's not to be mean. They do not care about 30 kids in a classroom because more times than not, they have to worry about 30,000 kids. And so the policies that affect communities are often widespread, but have disparate impact. And so it's helping people understand that, yes, this thing you're talking about may have an impact on your community. It is not random, and oftentimes it might have been intended to do something different. And so in order to affect change, you have to be able to speak to different audiences. The way that we are in like that I am in this training here isn't how I am at doors all the time. If I get someone who wants to have these very deep and nuanced conversations, then we get into it. But it's a matter of being able to simplify things so that people can host these conversations in those bite-sized chunks that we get at the doors. You have to be able to talk to people at the doors. You have to be able to talk to community members. You have to be able to talk to elected officials. And so if you actually want change, you need to be able to vary how you're showing up, how you're communicating things. And when we are at the doors, we have a very quick opportunity to help people hone that language. And like I said, we have to ask the right questions. It isn't whether or not there's enough money for our school. It is how is the money for the school actually being allocated? How are schools funded? It isn't to say like, why doesn't my kid's school or why doesn't our local community have clean parks or why is there still lead in our waters? Those are good questions, but who is responsible for making sure that that the pipes that lead to our homes are actually safe and secure? Once we start asking the right questions and helping people ask the right questions, we can increase their engagement and we can help them start to take the action that's necessary, whether that's just someone who's apathetic already getting to vote or someone who's really engaged, wanting to take a step further and engage more. And accountability is inescapable. When we are out in community, we see the impact of policy. We see the impact of decision making. We understand that the decisions that are made, the decision makers are accountable to the people. And that is why we knock on doors. That is why we try to get people out to vote because they are the most direct form of accountability. And so if we are able to convey nothing else for people who feel as though they haven't been heard or haven't been engaged or haven't been supported, they are the people that their elected officials are accountable to. And there are entry points everywhere. The same way that I just kind of asked you all, when have you seen change? We can be asking very targeted but simple questions to people to understand their political entry point. Um, Most recently, when we were in Milwaukee, I had a conversation with someone who didn't seem like they were interested in voting, flat out told me that they didn't really care. But when I told him, I was like, did you see the debate? He started talking to me. That was an entry point. He talked to me about the stimulus checks. Like, yeah, I remember those. He's like, how long ago was that? So you're saying that your vote is worth about what, $3 a day? That was an entry point, and it was the way that I was able to engage with someone in my community, but continually showing where his decision making gave entry points into the political process, helped engage them. And this one is across the board. If you're not at the table, you're on the menu. Everyone on this call, everyone at our doors, if you are not actively engaged in the decision-making process, if you are not pushing your community, your elected officials and people to be accountable, they are still going to make decisions just without your input. And so it's that call that we have to people that, hey, even if you feel that politics isn't important to you, it's still happening. If you don't feel like voting matters, voting is still happening. People are still going to make decisions. And so the best way you can shape it is to be engaged. And so just very briefly, if you all can drop in the chat, maybe two people want to come off, which one resonates the most to you? Which one seems to stand out or, it's like, hey, that's one that, I feel on a deeper level, or it doesn't make sense at all. Anyone? Thank you. If you're not engaged, policy is still happening. Menu quote. Anyone else? Thank you. Yeah. With reproductive freedom and things like, even if you feel as though it doesn't impact you, there are still decisions being made. right? And I think a lot of these tend to fit together, and helping people at the doors are incredibly important. Sometimes people are frustrated, not because they haven't done everything they could, and it's hard to tell them, are you asking the right person? Are you asking the right questions? And so what we're able to do in those moments, because yes, we have the script that we need to stick to that for our partner organizations, but in those human moments when we're talking to them, helping them understand the questions and the levers that they have, the entry points that they have to affect change are incredibly important. And so here is just kind of a really straightforward thing about praxis. And so I'm not going to live here. You'll get the opportunity to see this further. But what this really is saying is that you need to know your context, what you believe, what you're seeing, and what you do and don't know. That's a reflection piece. A theory piece is you need to understand and know kind of what people are saying about things. So we know what matters about voting. We know about voter engagement. We know that some elections are decided by just a handful of votes. And then we know that we need to do something. It's all these things together that actually make change. And so it's why we do the field assembly. It's why we have all of these the door, because we're not talking down to people. We're helping give them the information that will allow them to think about where they are, where they want to be, and how to do something about it. At the simplest level, that is what we are able to do in those micro interactions. What do you want to do? What do you know about the change that you want to see? Who do you need to contact? Where do you need to go? What's on the ballot that will have that happen? And in the simplest way, that's what this is showcasing, is that change happens when people are able to reflect on where they are, know what's being said about it, and know what they can do. And so at the doors, we need to talk up to people, not down. A lot of folks have commented at the doors, sometimes that like, hey, people were resistant to talking to me, or they, ended the conversation. We want to make sure that when we're engaging with and how they can take action on it. So we are talking them up. We want to empower them. We want them to know what's possible. And saying that we can empower people is a bit of a weird statement, because you can't give someone power without saying that you have a certain type. And so what we want them to do is recognize that they're already in positions to impact their situation. And so how do we respond, right? Someone comes to you with a thing, summarize and acknowledge what you've heard. Give them some of the information. It's like, hey, are you familiar with this official? It's like, okay, this is what they believe. This person actually voted about the thing that you are talking to me about. Have you considered voting for them? Do you know where your voting location is? Your role is in community with them. We're walking alongside people. And because we're walking alongside them, we're going to help them understand that some of the things that they really need to start focusing in on are issues. Because a lot of times what we get are problems. And so we're going to live here for a second. Problems are huge. They are vague. They have so many parts to them that we can't even begin to pick one apart. And because of that, they are overwhelming. They are hard to go up against. Like, we have no clue when they started, and they are everyone's problem. Like, even just in our chat, I know what some of the statements are about because we are often in community. But if we just say reproductive rights, that is a problem. That is big. There are a lot of things that we could be talking about. Are we talking about access to abortionist healthcare? Are we talking about comprehensive sex education? Are we talking about access to Plan B medication? Are we talking about the ways that apps are utilizing information to track menstruation cycles and things like that, which there are concerns around the safety and privacy of that. When we just say big picture, this thing, sometimes people are disenfranchised or disengaged because what they focused on is a problem that's too big to actually change. It defeats people because there is no clear policy solution. There's no clear change that we can help them look at. What we want them to do is see an issue. That is something that we can actually work on. It's immediate, it's specific, it's focused. We can tell if we won or lost, like if we were actually able to affect change. And so even if you saw just here, reproductive rights, big. But I know that access to things like mifepristone, which is a very straightforward drugs and the way that it's being talked about, that is something that organizations are winning on, not because they don't see the problem of reproductive rights as a massive thing to take on, but because they know that we can win and lose on issues and that changes problems. There are clear decision makers and causes. And different groups have different access points and concerns about issues. And because of that, we can build momentum. Think about how diverse our community is and that we all join in this. It's because we have issues that we are able to work around, and there are solutions. Because we're able to find those solutions, because we're able to build momentum, because we're able to speak clearly and specifically about the things that we want to see changed, we're able to actually win and lose. And so this is another way that when we are working with people, we're able to help them change what they understand about some of the issues to engage them, to either get them to that basic level of voting, to move them further into their action and engagement, or to really help them think about what things they can take on. So let's play a little game. I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to stop spotlighting myself for a second. So if I told you all education based on the kind of criteria that I've just laid out, is that a problem or an issue? If someone says like at the door, like, I'm just really struggling with the education in my kid's school, like, is that a problem or an issue? Got Karen with problem. Why? Ooh, I can probably randomly call on somebody. Anybody want to come off and tell me, why is that a problem and not an issue? Because it feels very real to them. But if they just say education, like it needs to change, needs to be fixed, it's vague. Thank you, Dr. Kathy. Yeah, incredibly vague. There are so many things. Are they talking about teacher certification? Are they talking about curriculum? Are they talking about school closures? But when we are at the doors, how many of you have seen people get really frustrated because the things that they're telling you, they want to see change, but there's no real lever for them to actually impact it because it's this 30,000-foot issue, right? Like if I flat out just said racism, right? Like, it's a problem, right? Like I don't like the way that they're talking about it, all the elected racism is a big issue, right? Like for them, it's an issue, but it's actually a problem. Now, what if someone comes and tells you, is like, yeah, there's lead in all the waters in our house? Problem or issue? Specifically chose that one because that is an issue in some of the communities that we're canvassing in. There are actual levers that we can push. There are people that we can hold accountable. There are ways that we can change that. Let's see, global climate change, like climate change, problem or issue. Thank you all for playing along with me. Karen, I could bother you. Why is that a problem, Karen?
Because it's so broad.
How would you make it an issue? Like, how would you narrow it, do you think?
You could talk about lowering energy costs through putting solar panels on your roof. So that brings it down to a very specific issue.
Absolutely. All right. Crime. So, like, and I know this is one that we've heard at doors. I can see some people laughing because that is one of the number one things. It's like, oh, crime in our neighborhood is really bad. Like, oh, okay. It feels real, like, right? Like when it's that big, it's something that normally we have. Rebecca, I caught
That
you.
is a, that is a, oh, well, I could argue both sides, but I think it's a problem because it would be useful to ask them, could you be more specific? Are you talking about capital punishment? Or are you talking about shoplifting in your neighborhood? Are you talking about, sentence lengths? You
Yep.
know,
Yeah.
yeah,
So the fact that you can do that though means it's a problem. The second I can start adding bullet points, it means
yeah.
that it's too big for me to actually have a thing. So crime, what do you mean by that? Right? Like, because I know when we were last canvassing, the issue of crime that people were most concerned about in one neighborhood were people speeding down the street. That was crime. It is, right? But
Yeah.
notice that that is their specific issue that we're able to help them get to. But if they just say crime, they are not going to feel like they can actually change something. And we may not have a clear idea of how to support them. Because if you're talking about capital punishment, that may be a state level thing, right? Like, does your state
Mhm.
still have the death penalty? If you're talking about people speeding in your neighborhood, you can get a stop sign or a speed sign. Your alderman can support that. If you're talking about how people are able to get, like their voting rights restored, there are different layers, which is why we looked at that municipal, city, state, federal, helping them figure out what their actual concern is and their issue helps us understand what lever we can pull to change things and helps put them in a position to actively affect change. So let's get back to it. Oh, goodness. So here's how we can do it. Here's how we can help them, make something into an issue. Help them make it specific, right? So people don't get together in this neighborhood anymore. The easiest question that we can ask is why? Or what makes you say that? When did it change? So if it's crime, it's like, oh, what type of crime, has really been impacting you? It's like, or what things are you really worried about? When did that happen? When was the last time you were able to talk to somebody about it? Do you know who you would talk to about it? Asking that one starts helping put the idea of whether they've actually reached out about someone or if they are just holding all of that in. And if they have talked to the right group, and then grounded in a time frame. We've got an election coming up. It seems kind of cheesy, but we can tie everything back to the election because that gives us a clear time marker, right? It's like, oh, well, the election coming up, there are candidates that are really interested in how communities are understanding crime. It's like, oh, have you looked into any of the people on your ballot and kind of where they stand? It's like, when was the last time you voted for your alderman? When was the last time you saw your alderman? When was the last time you saw your mayor? And then one of the final things that we can do is help them make it easy to understand. And this isn't, again, to talk down. It is because of what Ben said and what we know. People will forget. Even as much time as we're spending in this presentation, this training, and our time together, there will be things that you will go, oh, I remember when I heard we need to help people lock in their something is to help them teach it or share it. And so a very simple way is like, oh, what do you think you would tell your neighbor? Or if they live with people in their house, like, oh, have you talked, like, are you going to talk to your husband about that? Or are you going to, okay. Karen, I see a hand.
Yeah, so, most of our partner organizations, at least in Milwaukee, with Wisdoms and even Power to the Polls, one of the first things they wanted us to ask voters was what issue is most important to you? And then they list a bunch of problems. So, just to let people know that if somebody identifies an issue, it's really probably a problem they're identifying, and then you need to unpack that with them, correct?
Yep. So it's why I have no say on how they so there are very real reasons that our partners and larger organizations will highlight problems as issues because that helps set policy agendas at a higher level, right? If I'm getting thousands of people saying that COVID-19 is a problem, then I'm going to know that I like at a legislative level, I need to allocate funds. I need to be a part of the conversations around that. But that does not impact the individual life. And that's what we're talking about today, right? So if they tell you, it's like, oh yeah, I'm really worried about immigration. Okay, that helps us check the box for our partner organization, but that does not move that individual towards doing anything. And so we do want to be able to balance both, which is why a lot of what we're doing is questioning conversations, having this information, having some information that we can share, and helping them access things on their own. Let's see. Got the number. Thank you, sir. Yeah. So like you just want to know, tell me more about it. And it's where, I love getting to work with all of our volunteers, and I've loved getting to see all the people that come out with our teams. It's because this is where you lean into that just genuine human connection. We want to talk to people. We want to be together. And so in that moment, once you know what their issue, which you now know is actually a problem is, want to know more because that will help them become more specific. I like, oh my goodness, like I just had COVID like a few months ago. Like, has that been a big problem for people in your house? Boom. When was the last time you like were able to get tests? Oh, okay. Right. Like that genuine want will help them make a connection to you, but also they'll be able to connect better to their actual issue because they're talking about it. Sometimes people just stop talking about it because people aren't listening. And so as much as we're able to get them to the polls, get them engaged in voting, help them understand these basic things, we also are able to re-engage some people's desire for actual change by just being there. So after you've done all this, sometimes it's like hard. I'm going to highlight at the bottom. I said, don't pull a Batman. Sometimes folks say ghosting. Ghosting means that like you were already kind of doing a thing and then stop talking to them. As a comic book nerd, Batman will just leave in the middle of conversations. For those of you who know, it'll be like you're talking and then you look up and the person is gone. We want to actually end the conversations. And I can't say that, when it's like 6 p.m. and I've been going all day, that sometimes I'm not just trying to get away from doors, but that doesn't help that person lock in what we talked about. And so gratitude. And here's where if you are genuinely showing up to be in community with people and to connect with folks, the gratitude is the easiest thing, but it also shows them that they were not just another door that you had to knock. Because especially in our swing states, people are getting literature. You all have seen it, where some people may be home, but they've stopped answering their doors because they have stacks of literature outside of it. It is not that they are not engaged or that they don't care about voting. They are tired of having their doors knocked on. And that is a basic human thing. Who are you coming to my house at 9:45 in the morning or 11 when I'm trying to make lunch or just trying to go about my day to talk to me about voting? I know about voting. Great. Thank them for their time. If they shared something with you that you didn't know or that you appreciate, let them know it. Gratitude is an incredibly impactful and important thing, and it helps maybe open up the door as well for future people who may come knock. So, I wasn't familiar with, how things were happening here. Thank you for sharing that with me. And then give them a concise, oh my goodness, you all can tell that I was trying to do this while my plain internet was going in and out. But give them a concise recap. It's like, thank you for sharing all of your experiences with your son's school with me. Like I wasn't familiar that like with that curriculum, but I'm really happy that we were able to talk about, the upcoming election in November and we're really able to talk about some of the things that you're unhappy with that he's learning. Confirm that you understand what you all agree to is like, and I'm really excited that you're going to be able to go vote at, Frederick Douglass Elementary down the street, like, I hope that, I'm sure they won't change it, but if they do, we did talk about Ballot Ready or Ballotpedia, or on the literature right here, it tells you where you can go, right? Lock those things in and let them know if the conversation's actually over. It's like, I'm really thankful for your time. It's like, well, I'm gonna have to get going, but thank you so much. Boom. We can wrap that conversation up, and we still gave them action steps. We validated the opportunity for conversation we had. We affirmed their experiences, which a lot of people that are coming and knocking on doors do not always do. And so people start feeling like a thing that they need to be checked off for some organizations, versus people who are actually engaged, people who actually have wants and desires and hopes. And so that's what we want to validate and support. And so in the CP way of Mindset, Mojo, and Mobilize, that we are doing this work together. We are doing it across difference. We are doing it because our democracy can be and needs to be better. And so we take action. So we are catalyzing voters. We are registering voters. We are getting voters out, supporting by following our partner organizations. This one always resonates with me because there are not a lot of organizations that do it like this. There are not a lot of people who are saying we need to build coalitions across difference and go into places that other orgs may not always go, to work with partner organizations that may not always have the volunteer bases that will move them forward. So our final little bit of things, we are going to have a few scenarios. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to drop them I'm going to drop one in the chat, and I'm going to send you all to breakout rooms, and then we will come back. Oh no. People have another thing. All right. So I'm going to make sure that we will get through 2, and then I will release people. But I'm going to mix up your groups, but I do want to just give the opportunity to kind of practice some of these things. So your first one, that you will be in breakout groups discussing how to help. You knock on a door, and the resident says they're frustrated to you and say, I can't afford these increases, and it feels like no one is doing anything about it. And so your question with all of these, how will you support them? It is in the chat. We're gonna do, oh, I can't do breakout rooms. Ben.
Let's see if I can try. Okay,
Otherwise,
how many do you want in here, Jordan?
we have 29 people, which would be 27 excluding us. So let's do 10.
Okay, 10 breakout rooms, 2 to 3 participants in each room. Let's do
Boom.
it. I'm opening them now.
And we'll bring y'all back in like 2-3 minutes. Go for it. Oh, they are using their full time. I love it when a group uses their full, like right up until the room is closed. How was it, Donna?
It was fine. I wouldn't have come back so fast. I pushed the wrong button.
It's okay. I'm gonna give you all another chance to practice. Like, I got a few of these.
I had just asked somebody to share because there was someone who had not said anything. I said, would you like to share? And then I leave. That's not exactly good communication.
That's why I called it a Batman. Okay, anyone who knows the cartoon knows, like, Commissioner Gordon will be having a full conversation, will look up, and then he's by himself. All right, let's see. 2 people share out. How was it? How would you help this person? How would you support our canvasser?
I can go.
All right,
So,
Peter.
so our group kind of talked about, well, property tax is not presidential thing, but maybe there's an issue on the ballot or a candidate on the ballot that is property tax on the ballot this go around. So and assuming we've done the research and have some knowledge on that, we could speak to that a little bit. So bring up what do you know about the ballot, and maybe you can do some cast a vote in one way or the other to move that.
Yeah. One of the things that I found helpful, because I tried to pull from things that I've had either at doors and just some of our work, folks don't actually know, what is it? It's the assessor, and you vote for that person. So again, there are all of these governmental positions that people don't even know about. Some Sure. Yeah, that was because I had to learn about that on Ballot Ready because I was voting on it one day and it just kind of came up. And so sometimes we can help people understand that like there are all of these like other elected positions that impact your life. It isn't just your president, your mayor, and your alderman or like your alder person that you're voting for. So really showcasing like, okay, there are people that help make that decision.
So actually, so in this, I'm in Washington State, and we have King County. We have specific initiatives on the ballot. So it's not just the people; it's also the actual ballot initiatives. Do you vote this way or that way to make that decision? So that's also a factor in that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. All right, Annie.
We talked a bit about maybe posing the question like, when did you see this change, or when did you see the price increase? And then, have you spoken to anybody about it? Chances are they're going to say no, and they'll say like, I don't know who to reach out to, right? And that's when you can provide the information about who to reach out to. That's as far as we got, but it was like kind of engaging a bit more in the conversation that way, like a personal way.
Thank you so much. All right, Rebecca, you're our last one. Then I'm going to give you all one more before I throw you back in another room.
Well, I probably should have started when I said to her, I could be wrong, but because I didn't actually know who was in charge of local taxes in this way. But I did say that she could reach out to the mayor, the city council, and that she actually could attend city council meetings, ask questions, express her concern. Her response was, I didn't even know you could do that. I didn't think they would listen to us. And I was like, well, they work for us and you have a voice, and I would just empower you. You may find it, one step at a time, easier than you think to be involved. And particularly when it comes to this issue, let your voice be heard. And my feeling is if she called the mayor's office or the city council, they might even tell her who's actually in charge of that. But
so that'll depend on how big the city is, how big
yeah,
that scope is, right? Like you could call the mayor's office in Chicago and you're not going to get that.
You're not going to get that answer. Yeah. I mean,
Right?
I guess that's the thing. Should we be careful if we don't actually know who would make that decision of, I guess it's as simple as I could have looked it up on my phone right then and there. Yeah.
You could help, you could give them the resources. So that's why I started. We do not need to know the answers. Like I just learned something about how ballot initiatives and things are happening in Seattle. If I was there, I would not be telling them like how things happen. If I told someone in Chicago, like, yeah, you can call the mayor's office and they'll tell you that. You could call the mayor's office. You are not going to talk to anyone who is actually going to talk to you. They are busy, right?
Yeah.
So
I hear you.
It's helping them get to the resources so that they can keep doing the work after we're gone. And so
Right.
in our desire to help and support and show up for them, let's not take that agency away from them by telling them directly where to go, both because we could be wrong and
Yes.
then they have nothing to do.
Yeah.
All right. Penny.
I just had thought, is it appropriate to like get into the conversation of, about property taxes rising? I wonder why. Is it because they're improving our schools, or is it because they're improving the road? Like for them to think about why their property taxes are rising. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. In these conversations, your role is active listener. If they bring that up,
Okay.
validate it, support it, because that's their experience, right? You also are not going to be an expert in every single funding initiative and so the more into the weeds you get, the further out of your area of expertise you get, unless you are in your home state, home city, like home community. So validate if they're like, well, yeah, like I know that they said that they were going to be repaving the streets and stuff. And next thing I know, it's more expensive. It's like, oh, okay. Were you able to like, did you all vote on to wonder, right? Like, and when in doubt, turn to wonder and put the onus on the people that we're actually talking to give you
Mhm.
their experience and to find the information that will keep them going. All right, I got another one for you, and we're going to recreate the group. So you are not going to be with your same friends. Sorry. But you speak to someone who says that both candidates talk about education, but I'm not sure how either one will really help improve our schools. Moment of transparency. The reason that I highlight school so much, not just because I'm an educator, that is one of the most direct things that people have experience with and drives their impressions of some elected officials or community engagements. It impacts their kids, their grandkids. The quality of the school impacts their property values. So even if they are not engaged with schools, the quality of it matters to people. And so we get a lot of conversation around it. Like if I don't city or whatever, my neighborhood has a better reputation and is treated in a different way. We are able to ask for and leverage things. So the quality of it still impacts how people perceive themselves. So I'm going to do that. And we are going to recreate. Everybody,
Welcome back. Okay.
how'd it
Um,
go? How are we going to help?
Well, what ideas can you give me, since I'm only going to be seeing Republicans in Scranton in 2 weeks, what do you find to be the most effective way of having them even listen to me?
can I jump in on this, Jordan? Actually?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Proctor, if you're going up to Scranton, like I canvassed Cartwright District back in 2022, and let me just say up there that like it's a little bit it's right leaning, you're gonna get some Republican doors, but a lot of times people are independents. They're the exact kind of voter that this technique works really well in, actually. Because there are people that usually vote split ticket. So they actually like go for issues, right? Not party. So they really want to interrogate the candidates here, what they stand on and all of that. And I found that like they really appreciate you just saying that like, hey, you're someone that obviously is invested in this election, right? And you're someone that seems to know a lot about this or have done your research. Why don't you tell me a little bit more about what you know about this issue and where you stand on that, right? So I think like we're going to run into a lot of independent voters up there in near Scranton and in Pennsylvania in general. But I think there's also a lot of voters now that like would appreciate a more deeper understanding of these issues because all that they're getting in the news is this oversimplification of it, right? And the candidates that stand on either side. Um, so for your case specifically, I don't think you're going to have a problem of utilizing some of these techniques for those voters up there. And we have other training too that specifically talks to like unwelcoming or sometimes even hostile voters that you might encounter. So there's some other recordings that you can watch out there.
Yeah.
Jordan, would you have to add on that?
All I have from it is I was just talking about before we hopped on, the personal is political. And so I have engaged with Republicans. I've engaged with MAGA supporters who I consider different from Republicans because of the leaning, but the personal is political. And so the more we realize that we are talking with people who have cares, make the most sense to them, and then help them understand what other channels may be available, that's how we can support, right? And it's that same process. Validate their experience. I can't tell you that you don't feel that way. And I think one of the things that we try to do in being supportive or being well-intentioned or recognizing like what I don't want to diminish the existential fear that some of these like larger policy pose, but in understanding that fear, we still want to understand that we are talking with an individual, right? Like, so the person in front of you, while they are one vote, into place some of these federal policies. And so helping them see, like, okay, it's like, I'm hearing that you really care about safe. Where do you get your information? How does that information, make you feel? What types of things are you wondering about? Do you know where you would get more information, or do you know who makes those decisions? Right? And if you can't get through that on a human level, that's when a lot of the other trainings are helping you understand how to walk away, how to de-escalate, how to get away. But like, the core of what I can give you from this, regardless of where you're going, the personal is political, and people still want to engage with people. And in a lot of cases, some of the most ardent folks that are on the opposite side of us, it isn't necessarily that they disagree with some of the things we're saying. A lot of times, quite honestly, they feel like they've been talked down to, which is why one of the first things is, let's talk them up, right? Like, not to overly inflate a sense of self, but to validate that, like, I can't tell you you don't feel like that. I can't tell you that that is not the truth as you understand it. Again, not factual. I can't tell you that's the fact, but I can't tell you that that is not what you've experienced. What I can do is ask more questions to hopefully help you think deeper about it, and then give you opportunities to look into it further. Hopefully that helps.
That, if I got that far, it'd be awesome. Yes.
Ooh. All right, so let's see. In our room, we asked, what specific things would you like to change? Yes. Do you know if the candidates are addressing those specific things? Yep. Also, what candidates are you referring to? Yes. What candidates are you referring to? What issues are you actually like, again, when they say like everybody talks about education, are you talking about your school, how your school is funded? Okay. Are you talking about the curriculum? Are you talking about the teachers? We always want to narrow down, right? Like, and going back to that question, narrow down, make it specific, make it personal. The personal is political, and from there, we can help them identify actual issues. Because one of the things that I will never take away from a lot of people who politically I am in opposition to, they have done a very good job at making the personal political and galvanizing people around that. And so a lot of times we're not arguing issues, we're arguing feelings. We're arguing how something like resonates with them. And so by grounding a lot of these conversations in, well, what matters to you? When was the last time you saw that? Do you know who makes that decision? Have you been able to vote for that person? Have you been able to contact that person? Showing that these individuals are not being accountable to them and helping them see the action. Yep. Yes, Whitney. When in doubt, turn to wonder. Like, be curious. Right? Like, we are out there to be in community with one another. And one of the other things I can give you, a community is not a community if there isn't someone in it that you wish wasn't there. If everyone in your community is getting along, it ain't a community, it's a club. And we are not in clubs out here. Okay. So we are not going to agree. Even as people all with CP, with similar political leanings, we are not all going to agree on issues the same way. But we understand that we are in this together. And so with that, any final questions before I release folks and you get to enjoy the rest of your time?
Thanks.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.